All right. So I want to thank y'all for joining. It's actually good to meet some other cats, and hope we can have a good discussion here. I know we got a lot to say about what's going on. It's like, why are we here again type of situation.
Right.
So let me first just do introductions. I'm Jay, I'm with BLM Tokyo, and I'm actually currently in the States right now. The group's been around since what happened with George Floyd, and they came together to do some informational webinars, solidarity marches, and other events around Japan to kind of educate the Japanese public on what was happening in the States and what it was they were seeing on the news, and to also use that as a reflection to show what's happening in Japan in a lesser degree as well. So nice meeting you all. How about Marcus?
Okay, I'll go next. So Marcus McDonald, lead organizer of Charleston Black Lives Matter. We've been around since around like 2016 with the Eric Gardner case, and a lot of those issues around that time. We disbanded around 2017. Unfortunately, our lead organizer was killed pretty mysteriously. And then we kind of came back together in 2020 under new leadership. So it's me and some other folks who brought it back together and brought new life in memory of Muad'Dib, our old leader. And yeah, we just got back together on a lot of the core issues that a lot of the BLM groups came from, like police abolition, empowering our communities, et cetera. So those are the kind of things we came into with, and we continue to do those type of things. So based in Charleston, South Carolina, where a lot of notorious, hate crimes acts have occurred, like Mother Emanuel 9, once as 2017. So, and even Walter Scott happened here in Jamal Sutherland. So anyways, that's a long-winded introduction, but stay busy and it's a lot of stuff on our plate. So we try to help out where we can, and glad to be here.
Wow, that's what's up. Yeah. Who wants to go next? How about Lawrence?
Oh yeah, I'm sorry, I'm fixing my stuff because battery about to die. But anyway, so I'm Lawrence West. I'm with BLM RVA. You can see me right here. There you go. So I'm BLM RVA. I'm the CEO. We came together around like 2020 with the bringing down of the Robert E. Lee statue. We were the organization that stayed out there for over 2 years until Robert E. Lee came down. We've done a lot of different stuff here in the city and even outside of the city, in Buffalo, New York, and Cleveland, Ohio, and other places, DC, and so on and so forth. So, just getting the voices out and making a big push. We also call ourselves the occupiers as well, because that's like one of our main ways that we protest is through occupation, by standing still, because we know that people don't like Black people in, certain areas and such. So we protest by standing still in the capital of Confederacy. So
I hear that. Take up space.
Yeah, that's right.
So, and Jafari.
Yep, I'm here. So my bad. I'm still trying to get. I had a little couple technical difficulties. But peace and blessings. My name is Jafari. I'm president of BLM 757. We're based out of the 757 of Virginia. Despite everybody thinking that we're based out of quote unquote Virginia Beach, we cover the 757 area code of Virginia. We were formulated in 2016 off of in wake of Philando Castile, but also in the wake of the local injustices that we had that were being ignored, such as India Kager, William Chapman, David Latham, and things of that nature. We've been thriving for it'll be 7 years in July. We've been able to accomplish things such as getting 2 men out of prison, Matthew Rushing and Champ Turner. We wrote a petition to have Juneteenth recognized as a state holiday. And we've also expanded to Texas, New York, and have a village in Africa as well. We are also certified change makers, and we do all we can to make a change. BLM 757 stands for Be Like Malcolm, Be Like Martin. Change may take 7 days, 5 years, or 7 centuries, but change will come. BLM 757.
That's what's up. I appreciate y'all, joining in on this. Sounds like everybody's been doing a lot of good work. So, I mean, what we're here to talk about is what's been hitting the big news is with the case of Tyre Nichols, 29-year-old Black man that was viciously beaten to death by Memphis Police officers. And there's claims initially that he was driving erratic, which is why they stopped him. The police chief has since investigated, so they found no evidence to that. So it appears that they were either lying or trying to cover themselves on that. Initially, the 5 officers who were all Black were arrested. Well, not arrested, they were fired, and then they've been charged with murder. Since then, we've had 2 more officers have been fired. One who's white, one who hasn't been identified yet. 3 EMTs have been fired, and 2 sheriff deputies were relieved of duty pending investigation. So there's been a lot of people that have come down, but it's like here we are again. You know what I mean? Like, so what kind of in your area or in your circles, what's the talk? What's going on in regards to this?
I mean, as far as like what we know, I mean, okay, so Virginia, of course, Tennessee is not that far, and we've been checking in with a couple of different people, and what have you, but there's rumors going around about like some familiarity with one of the officers and Tyre, and so there, that has something to do. Some people say it detracts from the message. Some people say that it is true. Some people say it isn't true. But even if those rumors are true, having to do with him dating a girl that was also dating the police officer or whatever, whether it's true or not, one of the things that we've been able to just, keep the attention and push that regardless of whatever the agenda or whatever the motive was, it's still an abuse of power, regardless, Mm-hmm. And so, definitely, I think sometimes, depending on whatever the narrative, people are able to accept things a little bit more or less or what have you. And then like some people that are all about like, just I hate cops type thing, they don't want to hear nothing else except for, see, it's a cop, he's bad, but like we do have to like look at the surrounding situations or the surrounding things that are happening, and we have to figure out why sometimes, just because like not necessarily because like, oh, he could have had a better training or whatever, like maybe he could have did something different, but more so of like, okay, so like what are the triggers, like, because even in the mission of abolition, like we still got to live right now, and living right now is about survival and trying to figure out what are the best techniques to utilize to keep our people safe here locally, and to hold the police accountable here locally while we're in the mission in the pursuit of abolition, so that's, I had to say that because I'm on the blogs and I'm into all of that, and there's it's a lot of stuff being said left and right, by the protest community, by the Black community, and had to just touch on that.
Yeah, and I've seen that rumor you're talking about, and then a couple of places have attempted to fact check it, and it's at this point it's unsubstantiated. So again, it could be like you said, someone just either not wanting to believe certain things or wanting to just stir the pot a little bit in that regard. But the reality is that this man is dead because of police brutality and overreach. And this is definitely something that continues to happen. And every time it does happen, everyone comes out and it's like, this should be the last time, but here we are again with it.
Yeah.
So, one thing that was a little bit different in this case that I think is worth talking about is that the 5 police officers that were fired and charged were all Black. And in this case, this was a swift judgment. Like, they were fired quickly and charged faster than I've seen in any other cases. What do we think that attributes to? And I'm sure, we all have an answer for that. So,
I mean, for me, let anybody say, how,
Marcus, Jafari, or whatever, whoever.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
Okay, all right. But so like for me, I think it's just like one of those things that, okay, these cops were Black, so it's like, oh, Black on Black crime, like kind of like trying to push that agenda, you know what I mean? Like to say like, oh, okay, well, we could put our foot down because they were Black cops, so we don't have to like jump through all of the police union hoops that we normally would jump through. There's going to be less opposition to charges and so on and so forth because they're Black cops. And so they're not covered the same as, their white counterparts. And, even not just white counterparts, even women, when we look at women that have been held accountable for situations where someone ends up dead, they weren't, there was not as much opposition, but when it's a white police officer, a white male police officer, then they pull out all the stops, and so I think that it has a lot to do with, being able to continue that Black on Black type mentality of crime, and then to try to push that as like, okay, here's the narrative of Black on Black crime. And I think, that speaks to some of that rumor situation, that Black on Black crime because of a girl or because of whatever, because, without there being a gun present, without there being some type of force that Tyre Nichols used, then it's like, okay, we don't have a reason. So it's like, we got to take these Black guys to justice because they're out of control. You know what I mean? Not like these police officers are out of control. It's like these Black guys are out of control. They're like a gang, right? Not even saying that the police officers are like a gang. It's like those guys. We're gonna, and here's the funny part, right? We're gonna disband the Scorpion unit. Wait, but we've been calling for the disbanding of police. You know what I'm saying? How is that the answer? Like, when you disband, you're disbanding the unit saying, oh, that doesn't work. So then, like, how is that the answer over there on the micro scale, but it's not the answer on the macro scale? That doesn't make sense, So
I feel like that this doesn't, we've dealt with quite a few different cases of brutality in Virginia, and it's one of the reasons why we stay so vocal. And so we feel like that if these officers weren't allowed to get away with murder, such as cases in our own city, like Virginia Beach, Donovan Lynch was Pharrell Williams' cousin. Donovan Lynch was Black. The person who killed Donovan Lynch was Solomon Simmons. Solomon Simmons is Black. Solomon Simmons to this day still hasn't even brought to trial. The grand jury saw that he didn't even have to come see trial. So I think it depends on where you're at, the mentality, because, we were calling, everything under the sun, and he was Pharrell's cousin. He had a security license, did everything right, and he was criminalized. in his own death, even saying he had big hands. But the good thing about us dealing with different jurisdictions here in Virginia in the 757 where we do stuff, we pretty much have 7 main cities that we're in, and 2 cities that we're in have convicted cops. That's Newport News, Virginia. They just recently convicted a cop just last year, but that cop murdered a white guy, so it's kind of, but and then the other one, William Chapman, we got justice in that case. Officer Stephen Rankin, we got him sentenced to 2.5 years. But even recently, both police departments have suspended police officers and brought them to trial, while in other surrounding cities, such as Chesapeake, they keep having runaway fatalities, and it's supposed to be a no-chase city. Virginia Beach has killed countless individuals, and Norfolk has killed countless individuals, and they never even bring them to trial right here in the same area. So that's why we say you have to bring down the whole system and really study these different departments and how they operate. Well, why is it that Tennessee released their video 3 days later, but we still haven't seen video from India Kager from 2015 or DeMario Joyner from 2003, but there were no body cameras. So it's just, I think the commonality here is the police are the gang. Black, white, Hispanic, or in between. And unfortunately, a lot of times we see the most egregious acts done by the white, like they say in the FTP song, black officers showing white for the white cop, and I'll land right there for right now.
Now, yeah, the Ice Cube quote, I know that song. Yeah, that's that. I think part of that has to do with, like, they know what they can get away with and who they can target to get away with it in most cases. I think it has everything to do with the system doesn't see Black bodies as valuable. And in so those cases, when things happen, they know they can skate on some of these. If it was, five officers beating down a white individual, then, they wouldn't happen because they know they wouldn't be able to get away with it. Now here, of course, it was caught on camera and it was very egregious. There wasn't anything they could make up, but I think they just know what they can get away with. And, because they have their insurance that's going to pay out. They know that they're going to be able to pay out so much every year or whatever. And, they push that envelope. And unfortunately with us, they know that consequences are less pronounced when we're the victims than when other people are the victims.
And even in that, with them, when the officers park, they specifically park their vehicles so the dash cam wouldn't pick it up. And a lot of times people say, oh, it's caught on body camera. They know how to maneuver these body cameras. You got to remember, these body cams are in compromising positions. So if you get to tussling or shuffling or whatever, it's just giving you a first person view or whatever. And they can try to say you swung at them or whatever. So they even got, good with going around that. And even here in Virginia Beach, they go as far as not giving people their FOIA requests. So I think the more we speak out about these departments, the more they get brought to light, because when you have these smaller police departments and these smaller cities that don't have, quote unquote, bigger advocacy groups, they're not as up to speed as some of us may be, not to their own, but because it's just a slower area. Like some country areas, they don't, pick up as fast. And then, like I said, I'm originally from Pittsburgh, but Virginia and Pittsburgh are different. And then it's different from, New York, it's faster. But being able to organize, and when these smaller, cities reach out, be able to do something like Lieutenant Nazario. I don't know if everybody saw, he was pepper sprayed. That was here in Virginia, the Army lieutenant. He was Black officer, and we just saw that case in point. They awarded him less than $4,000. It was clearly on film, but according to the law, they go by that when it's come time to punish us. But whenever we're supposed to be when we're allowed to be in fear for our lives, it's always but or whatever. But it's like it's got to end qualified immunity as well.
Yeah, I was just sitting here thinking too. In 2020, when we were like dead focused on bringing Lee down, there was like a little silent war between the media and not between the media, for the media, between us and the police, right? And so what the usual thing, the usual tactic that the police would do is they would spread misinformation and then correct it very lightly, slightly later on, right? And then, so what started to happen is that we would get to the information first. So they wouldn't even have the opportunity to like create misinformation, because we'd be like going live and all these other types of things and so on and so forth. And then like, you know, spreading it to a lot of different people, utilizing social media, and then social media would pick it up and just run with it and be wildfire. So then they would have to respond to it. And that, along with putting pressure on our local mayor and governor, and just so happened that in 2020, our governor got caught with blackface. So like he was trying to like backpedal and so on and so forth. So that way, you know, like he was real apathetic to anything a Black person said. So with that being said, we end up going through, I think this is our fourth police chief since 2020. I would say that we at least are attributed to two of them getting knocked out of here, especially because of the way that they handled the circle during the protests and so on and so forth. But I have to say this, that a lot of these people, like the mayors, city council people, sometimes the city manager, or whoever's in position to appoint the police chiefs and so on and so forth, they are afraid of losing their job. And that's, I mean, like, if there's nothing else I can say, is that any elected official that's here local, their threshold of public opinion is very, very small. In order to get in a Congress seat, you need 1,000 votes. That's all. I mean, not 1,000 votes, but 1,000 signatures on a petition. That's not a whole lot when you're going up against a person that has 10,000 followers and it's hyper local. You know what I mean? And so with that being said, if you got 5,000 followers, right, and it's hyper local, and a city council person is doing something kind of stupid or whatever, even a delegate or a senator, a local delegate or a local senator, then, you know, they're going to be held to account in that area. And I say all that to say that, you know, when we see something like Tyre Nichols, who was beat to death. So like a lot of times when we start talking about these deaths that happen, we're talking about a gunshot, instant death. Tyre Nichols was beat to death. And because George Floyd was, it took 8 minutes for him to die. That was one of the biggest reasons why the outcry was just so dramatic, because he had time to scream for his mama. You know, we had to watch him die. We had to watch him suffocate. And we had to watch the expression on the police officer's face, looking dead at the camera like, I don't care, you know. So we had all of that, being able to box it up. But with Tyre Nichols, we actually are witnessing him get beat to death by multiple people. So that was not a slow death. It was no mistake, you know. And like, who is held to account for that? So when we start talking about, like, you know, why did the Black police officers, you know, get fired right off the cuff? I mean, there was no mistake. You know what I mean? Like there was no mistake. There was nothing that anyone could say that was a mistake. You know, they lifted him up. He was handcuffed, and they beat him with a baton and so on and so forth. And so, you know,
pepper spray, taser, pepper spray.
Right, exactly. So with all that being said, like, everybody should lose their job. I'm talking about city manager. I'm talking about mayor. I'm talking about like everybody who's had anything to do with, who was above police chiefs, police, whatever. Everybody got to go, you know, because the amount of abuse that was, it couldn't have been a one-off. You know, it had to be like, they must have did this even at a smaller form or a less drastic form. They probably have done it before. you know. And so this is what you got going around that city, police and calling themselves the authority that people are subject to any day of the week, you know. And so how long were these guys on the force? Because these are supposed to be elite people, you know. So everybody should have really lost their job. And I think that they were definitely trying to clean that up, trying to clean that situation up.
Definitely. And then even on the scene, if you in some of the footage, when they're talking to each other and telling the story, like they're saying things like, "Oh, he was reaching for the gun. He tried to attack me," and you know, even in the cause for stopping him, they say that he was driving erratically, and none of the stuff proves any of that. It wasn't there. He wasn't trying to reach for anything. He was just fighting for his life. So it's like his last moments was obviously one in terror, because like I said, this was a crowd of people, a gang of people just beating him to death, and all of them taking turns with different ways. You know, there was a dude that was just giving him full-on haymakers. The other dude pulled out his baton. You know, the guy with the taser, then of course pepper sprayed a couple of times. So it's undeniable in that case. And what you said is definitely true. You don't go to this level first day on the job. There has to, this is something that has happened before. They've been a part of before, and they obviously felt they could get away with it. So I agree. Everyone needs to go in that case. This is something that becomes a culture issue, a culture of that department, a culture of policing in general, but a culture of that department. And that's everybody, the other officers and leadership.
I think something else at least that we need to open our eyes to, and it's kind of something that we look at with the Donovan Lynch and the Shayla Harris situation. You know, once the police get on the scene, they get to control the entire narrative, and they do that with the news media as well. But they get to collect and not collect certain evidence because they're on the scene. There's not no independent people coming there and collecting evidence. Like, say, for the instance of March 26th, they were so hell-bent on proving that the officer was somehow justified in killing Donovan Lynch. We never got the body cams from that entire day. We never got the FOIA for all the radio calls and everything else. They were left outside from before 12 midnight until about 9 in the morning on the pavement while their family members looked for them. And her mom found out through FaceTime. You know, when it's just that tape up, they can do whatever behind that tape. The news is not allowed back there. They got all their cameras off. So whatever evidence they do and don't collect is really up to their own disclosure. So they say, oh, well, the evidence didn't show. You might have purposely not even picked up whatever evidence. And, you know, and say, you know, we notice, well, we do feel like this should set a precedence where that's the one thing we could agree with Ben Crump. There should be a precedence. You know, all that holding videos for months and months and months is under investigation. Why is it that when they know they're dead wrong, they'll release the tape or whatever, or when they know they're in the right, they'll release the tape, right, whatever. But whenever they got to figure it out, we never see the video. And like I said, we have several cases that we still to this day haven't been able to see video camera for, and that's in multiple states and multiple jurisdictions. So I think we need to look at having independent, and I know we still got to get it together with the abolitionists, because I think that's the thing that happens is, like, once you get the police out the way, are we organized enough to replace them everywhere? Because yes, like I said, BLM occupiers, y'all occupied outside BLM 757, but the smaller cities that have no advocacy groups, that don't have any Black Panthers, Black Lives Matters, NAACPs, where does that leave them? Because you're generally going to have bodies for your own community and not have enough bodies to exert yourself to other cities and localities. So, you know, we always like to take a rational approach with everything. And I'll land for that right now.
Yeah. Yeah, anything you wanted to say, Marcus?
I must say, I said all the good things already, but nah, no, I mean, just like chiming in on what everybody else said. Another thing that I feel like I've noticed in this whole situation that at least is illuminated for some people, but I guess people who like in our work kind of already know this. But as far as like the idea or the understanding that having more Black cops isn't going to like solve anything. And to people who are familiar with the work and know what's going on, that's like a given. But there's some people who like, I mean, I guess until the situation really came up, it's like, well, what if we just have more Black cops? They just need more diversity or more, even like, can people say more training? And I sometimes even back away from that because like, yes, so some of them need more training, but at the end of the day too, a lot of them just don't care. Like they don't care about the training, at least the racially biased training. I remember there was a training that I had to go on in Charleston, and there's a North Charleston police officer who's asleep during the training, and this is supposed to be like racial diversity training or whatever. And it was on Zoom. Man fell asleep. Everybody else is on lunch. This man's like knocked out. So I said it to say like it kind of like opened the veil for a lot of people to understand that like and even with Memphis' police chief, she's a Black woman. And I remember I want to say like when she got appointed in 2021, a lot of people like there was like posts like, oh, finally we got a Black woman as Memphis chief, whatever. And then on the comments, some of them were like, well, just because she's Black don't mean she's gonna do what's right by us or whatever. And I don't know, I'm glad that more people are looking at it more in a nuanced sense. It's like, it's the police force as a whole, not just like, you're not just going to add a couple Black faces and expect it to be better, you know? So I think that's what I've been seeing, that the conversation evolved a little bit.
Yeah, and I definitely want to get into that. But I did want to speak when you mentioned as far as how where we talking about how fast this came down. I think this also, and maybe Ben Crump alluded to this as far as being a precedent, it alludes to that there's no excuse from here on out, like why it should take longer. Like we've seen when y'all want to get it done, y'all can get it done real quick. You can get people fired and charged immediately and have them investigations underway and the footage out to the public within a week or two. Like there's no excuse now for them to say, oh, well, we got to do this. No, we know when y'all want to put it together, y'all can put it together.
And what I've been alluding to since COVID showed us that, because we have been, around since 2016. So we saw some election cycles and they'd always be like, oh, next session or whatever. But when COVID came, they like, snap, everybody got to be home at 8, snap, everybody got to wear a mask here. And they did it fast. And they also showed that they had funds readily available for whatever. Just like that, they was able to give everybody the stimmies. They was able to give everybody all the extra money on their as well as regulate. It didn't take a session. It didn't take the House and the Senate and the Nina and the Penna and the Santa Marina to go through everything to get it done. So you can hold, and I like to use examples of things that are already in, because I look at everything like a case law when I'm looking at these agencies, because you got to speak their language, and you start speaking their language, just like the same with reparation. You start talking damages, you start talking insurance. They're like, oh, that's the language I can relate to, because they have that same type of appeal. So, and I say hold their foot to their neck for the whole time, but the same answer is not going to do it. And like you said, being able to have that release. What's the purpose of holding it? They say it's under investigating. Okay, if y'all release the footage, we can all investigate together. Y'all ain't got to be the only one investigating. So what's, if y'all not looking for no new suspect, y'all not, whatever, what's the guise of holding it? We feel like you got to hold it, you're altering it, or coming up with some way, like say, rehearsing stories and got to get it right, something. But they got to come up with something.
I think what you said there was true, like as far as like when COVID hit and how they were able to do this like this. That means politicians can move on this too, like addressing these issues that keep coming back. And it's not anything new. Like, it wasn't just, George Floyd, it wasn't, Sean Bell, it was Rodney King. You go further back than that and it just keeps happening. But if they want to put that attention, if they really want to address it, they can address it and make something happen. So we've seen that they have that capacity.
Yeah, and it's funny that y'all mentioned that. Jafari, one of my specialties is knowing who can do what, right? That's like one of the good things I'm known for. And so, like for instance, during the occupation of Robert E. Lee, there was about $10 million that was allocated to us from in the city of Richmond. So we was hitting them in the pockets, and I mean, we was hitting them hard. I mean, they took about $10 million directly out of the regular budget. Some of that money was probably COVID money, but they took $10 million and they allocated it to the police departments around the city of Richmond. And most of those police departments would have overtime and so on and so forth, just so that they could patrol, so that they could patrol, that they could monitor, and they could enforce anything they wanted to on protesters. So that was where that budget, that $10 million went to. That $10 million was about gone in about a year, maybe a little less than, definitely less than a year and a half, but maybe a little bit more than a year. But it was about $10 million that was allocated. That COVID money that we're talking about, that was an executive action from the president. So once that executive action happened from the president, and then was moved to Congress, and the Congress, they approved stimulus money and the actual printing of money and so on and so forth in order to get COVID under control. Anyway, they distributed it to the different states, and then once it was under the governor's budget, the governor was able to say, okay, through executive order and through the a state of emergency. So once they call that state of emergency, then that's when these funds can be allocated through executive action, almost any way that they want to allocate it. So, with any type of destruction that happened to personal property, it would cause the state of emergency. The state of emergency would then bring that money to the different localities, and these localities would get the money based on how much of an emergency that they were having. So the state of emergency was COVID, but it also was the protests, right? And so you had all of these things happening all at once. We actually just saw with Tyre Nichols another push of some money that actually just came through, not only here in Richmond, but in the 757, all around the country. There was another push of allocated money that was already allocated. When I say allocated money, I'm talking about things that were already in the budget. It wasn't just sitting around waiting to do nothing. It actually had a place, it had a purpose. But they reallocated money specifically to respond to protests that were going to they thought were going to happen, because of Tyre Nichols. And so when we start looking at those types of things, is that we start talking about, and I know at some point we have made mention about abolition, and are we really prepared to look at methods without police? But if we start looking at taking some of those same types of processes, right, and recognize that there currently is a state of an emergency right now in different neighborhoods, food deserts, and so on and so forth, that cause certain actions to happen, and take those monies and put it into neighborhoods and localities that would bring the equity up in those areas, in those localities, then we would have a reduced crime rate. Whereas now we have more money going to reaction to crime, right? And so that reaction to crime is what allows the police force to continue to go on and on and on, regardless of the amount of mistakes or, and I just posed this question for anyone to think about, because it took me a long time to get to the place where I believe in abolition now. And because I really just had to reckon with myself and say, all right, if this happens 100 more times, in that 100 more times, will there be a significant change to prevent it to happen 100 more times after that? And the answer is no. So we'll spend our entire life fighting for change from a police department, this existing police department. And unless it's reconstructed or completely brought down and the inner workings of it are completely changed, and the people are changed, the motives are changed, the way that the budgets happen are changed, the way that they get money, the way that they're promoted, and so on and so forth. Unless everything changes, then the nuance, the consistency is that they will continue to do whatever they want to do and justify it through media and through lies, you know? And so if there's no camera with Tyre Nichols, if there's no cameras with Tyre Nichols, everyone would have dismissed it as he went for someone's gun, or, you know, he was resisting, because they are taught, and make no mistake about this, they are taught while they put you on the ground to say, stop resisting. Doesn't matter if you're resisting or not. They're taught to do that. They literally do that as they put you in cuffs, as they put you down on the ground. They say, stop resisting. I remember we were doing a march, and I guess this is when they recognized that I was one of the leaders of the actual resistance here in Richmond. They moved through a crowd and picked me out of it and said, y'all need to get out the street. Do you want to get a ticket? So I guess they had finally recognized that I was one of the leaders. And I was like, sure, I'll take a ticket. And so one cop grabbed me, and he was unsure, and I could tell he was unsure. And then the other cop grabbed me, and he was shaking. So the first thing I did was I acknowledged that the guy was shaking, and I said it out loud. I said, man, your hand is shaking. You scared? If you scared, you shouldn't be here. And he had to kind of like let go, because he knew that he wasn't going to be able to stop shaking, you know, because he was scared, you know. And then another officer came up, and he was standing real close, like he wanted to tussle with me or whatever. I said, man, you getting real close for a traffic citation. And then the commanding officer had to tell him to get back. So being able to identify knowing what they're going to do, and being able to identify when they start going down that path, is kind of like something that I had to learn specifically so that I could call them out as they're doing it. And they can't, I'm beating them to the punch. Let me say it that way. I'm beating them to the punch to where they can't grab me and then say, stop resisting. Because before you grab me, I just said that you got too close for a traffic violation. So you already had something on your mind, you know? And I think that either we're gonna have to train Black communities to be able to identify and call out things that are happening before they happen, or we're going to really have to dismantle these organizations that call themselves police, that are really gangs and you know, a culture of white supremacy.
Yeah, I think there definitely is that connection to white supremacy and racism and the culture of policing, and what it is they learn, what they're trained to do, how they're trained to react. And like you said, they act reactionary, but there's also that military element that's come into the policing. And one of the things I think we mentioned earlier with the police chief, and I wanted to get into that in a little bit, because she had training with the Israeli military force. Mm-hmm. And that's happened with a lot of police departments around the country. Matter of fact, New York Police Department even has a substation in Israel, which makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. But right. Yeah, so that was, you know, the culture is definitely something that needs to be changed, and how they go about it, and how they're viewing the public, and even more so how they're viewing us, because they obviously see us in a different light. And I mean, just the culture of America in general says that we are less than, we're not as valuable, so they know what they can get away with. So in this case, we had 5 Black cops though, and Marcus had mentioned earlier, when people talk about these things, when one of the things that always comes up is about more diversity. We get more Black faces on the police force, we get more people in there, and these things will change because they'll understand the community, they'll understand us, and it's not. But this time, it was 5 Black officers. The police chief is Black. 2 of the 3 EMTs that were relieved were Black. One of them was a lieutenant. So in this case, there was Black faces around. And that still didn't prevent this man from getting brutally beaten and killed.
Unfortunately, we see that here in the 757 with so many different cases that we had the unfortunate, task of being on. Like, for instance, Norfolk, they have a Black mayor, but he is also questionably the owner of the largest funeral home in the city. And the funeral was stricken with gun violence and deaths, and they never move a finger to it. They had a Black chief, but he just recently retired. Virginia Beach, they have a white chief, but they have a Black city manager. Like Lawrence was saying earlier, it's important to know who does what and who actually pulls what strings behind those doors, because a lot of times people be screaming at the clouds and they really gonna have to go for a swim. They told them to talk to exact wrong people. But seeing here that, once they get, it seems to be a power thing. Once they get in that position of power, once they get elected, they just forget everything, and it turns into a systematic thing where they may be controlled by, in all these organizations, all these political figures, they controlled by the Democrats, controlled by the Republicans. They don't never say, oh, we're doing this for the people. They always say, oh, we're doing this for the Democratic Party. Oh, we're doing this for the Republican Party. Oh, this is about officer safety. When is the citizens' safety and well-being ever come into question? It's like we're second, third, fourth on the list to the politicians' safety and law enforcement safety, where it's like they're not competing, or they're not getting elected to serve the people. They're getting elected for the power it gets. Oh, if I get elected, I can literally damn near get away with murder, having secret documents at your house. You get all types of mulligans once you're elected. But it's like, that's why people, and they try to push people, oh, don't run independent, the party line. And I think that's important for us too. Now is the time to start grooming independent people, just like we're independent BLMs, independent runners, because you got 2024. We know it can't just, we can't just throw it on people at election season, start throwing it on them now. Like, hey, look into independent candidates, look at candidates, ask them specific questions. Coming up, are you ask these next people in this election, are you going to stand for the George Floyd Policing Act? And we need you to verbalize it. I don't need you to say, oh yeah, we'll look into it. No, we need you to say, just like you'll say that you're standing for Roe v. Wade, just like you say that you're standing for gun control, say that you are running off of the George Floyd Act. And then we should start being able to hold these politicians to a contract. Oh, you're running off of this right here? Oh, okay. Well, if you don't mind, if you would sign right here saying that once we get you elected, you're going to go ahead and do what you say. Otherwise, some type of sanction or something, we'll figure it all out. But I think ultimately the whole system has to be scrapped. Just like the Constitution was made, we got to make it more modernized, whatever, and however many decimals it has to have. But the cops were originally slave patrol. We need to start calling them by their real names. And the system isn't broken. It's doing exactly what it was built to do. So, what we have to, we're kind of like said, we're on a slow, steady climb. And the good thing about 2020 is everybody had time to sit and digest everything. And I think that's why, some of you individuals, like I said, like Charleston, I said, some of y'all may have been before 2020, but some like, RVA sparked from that. But I think it takes a certain type of grit. Like, if you weren't there in 2020, this doesn't feel like this is going to wake up those new organizers, because it was 2020. Everybody had money. Everybody was off of work and quarantine. The weather was right. Like, literally, it was the perfect storm. Like, people could sit home and watch the news. They didn't just catch tidbits to and on the way from work and whatever they was doing. And so now it's going to be up to us to show people what we did, to show what they were able to do in RVA, to show what we was able to do in 7.5, y'all doing in Tokyo, Charleston, and then telling y'all story. We need to amplify each other more so people can hear this stuff, because it gets repetition. Why do you know I have a dream? Because they repetitively put it in our head. They didn't just say, name one Malcolm X speech. So you can't, because they didn't keep drumming any particular Malcolm X speeches down our throat. Not to say that's anything, but we have to keep putting the information out there. The news media is not going to do it. They pick and choose depending on the topic. And of course, they're going to call all of us now, where some of y'all may not have heard from the news for 1-2 years. You might try to get them to your toy drive, food drive, nothing. But as soon as they heard y'all was having another protest, we're going to be there. So it's going to look like all we do is protest. Like, we is calling y'all for all these real significant community needs. Couldn't get you. Now, it's a protest. Yeah, because that's their system. That's their cycle. Like, they won't stop blowing you up. I know my bro get me up there. Like, so, I mean, and I'll land right there, man. It's a lot of intricate parts. That's why it's hard to argue with people or combat with people that's not really about the work, because I'm not going to explain what's going on at this one particular protest so you can try to microscope some type of point that you're trying to make about me. Like, that's why we say, if you're not outside, it's not really, it's not really much I can say to you, because you're not out here. It's too much to explain. One thing is probably spawned from 3 to 5 other pre-actions that got us here. So if you're ready to make it a commitment, then come on. But you got your 2-week commits, you got your 1-month commits, you got your 3-month commits, you got your until they find a boyfriend or girlfriend commits. But then you rarely find those that stick to it and do it regardless. And that's why I appreciate everybody in this room. And hopefully, like I say, y'all kind of feel like where I'm at. When 1 year turn to 2, turn to 6, it's like it's a cycle. Or like, okay, kind of like Christmas, it's coming. And unfortunately, it's kind of like we try to stay close with everybody when it was slow, because we knew another Tyre Nichols situation was on the horizon. It's only America, and it's only bound to happen again.
Yeah. Absolutely, at that point. But you got Marcus riled up. So
I'm about to say because there's a couple points I was like, man, I had to say something on that, because I feel like it's a universal, like, art, like, activists are always like, as far as like the way the media will like what's the word, curate a message, and I feel like everybody's been saying it, but like to curate the message, y'all only show up for protests, but we do all XYZ. You just don't hear about it. But just because you don't hear about it don't mean it's not happening. And it was actually, I'm gonna have to send it if I can find it, but I'll be reading the Black Panther newspaper sometime, and like the OG ones, and they were saying the same shit back then. They was like, they never come when we having our food programs or whatever, our sickle cell anemia stuff, but anytime we like shooting out at the police or whatever, that's what you see. So to the people back in those days in the 70s and 80s, it was like they saw all the like the violence and whatever, and then now that it's been years ahead, we can see all the programs they've done, and the things that they did for the community. But back then, like I said, it was such a strong media manipulation that you can kind of disconcern what they actually did to like what you saw in the newspaper. So anyways, I'd say because like that really struck a nerve for me. And it's like we have to really like kind of shift the narrative really, because like people don't really like, because especially in times like this when there's not as much protest or different things going on, just really like making sure that we put ourselves out there and people know that we saw different things. And like I said, it's easier said than done, but just making sure that the presence is felt and people know that you is here for whatever they need, not only just like for the big protest, but for the small stuff as well. And I know like our individual groups probably do that differently, but it is a struggle regardless, trying to get over that media hump of like, respect us for like, like you said, community programs and the overarching things that we do, because it's important.
Yeah. That brings to mind, what's that? I guess it's an Anderson .Paak line from Dr. Dre's album when he's like, please don't come around these parts claiming we're all a bunch of animals. The only time you want to turn the cameras on is when we're tearing stuff up. If y'all remember that line there.
Yeah, funny about this is that I think myself and Jafari, we both have recognized a solution. We do it different ways. So becoming the media, right? So like, they don't acknowledge us. So we compete with them to where either we're going to tell a story or they're going to tell a story. And all it's about is about the amount of impressions that, their whole platforms are based on impressions and such. So with social media, that's put more power back into our hands because we have our own social groups that we are able to talk to very instantly, right? So they have to develop their blocks. They have to develop their programming and so on and so forth. They have to make it look right, put all of their edits and so on and so forth, which takes some time. And so we post right just like that. So competing with the news definitely has helped. I know both of our organizations, it has helped us. And then also partnering with blogs, because the blogs are the news for younger people. People don't really watch TV, like talking about, like I don't even have a TV that I use for like regular news, like regular airway stuff. Like I either watch Roku or like I'll go online and look at stuff like that. So I say that to say that that stronghold is changing, right? And one of the things that I know that our organization and Jafari's organization has done is we position ourselves as the news in certain instances, to give that story. And then, the news kind of has to, they have to react. It's putting them in a position to where they don't own the narrative, and taking that power away from them, and then giving the power back in partnership. So that's one of the things that I've been very successful with is having secret meetings with the news and letting them know I'm willing to give them the power back, but they have to amplify my voice. You see,
they need to be they need to be accurate. They need to be
right.
holding them accountable for what they're putting out there. And like you said, with some of the younger people and a lot of people these days, news gets that they come across is through social media, through blogs, through Twitter, through Instagram posts and this and that. And we first saw, I think the first big example of how that was becoming part of the new way people were getting it was during I don't know if y'all remember the Occupy Wall Street protests. I was in New York at the time, and that was going on for a full 2 weeks more, and national media wasn't talking about it. It was a complete media blackout, and it was pretty much a coordinated effort. But the effort to get the information out was the citizen journalists, was the blogs, was Twitter, was people that were getting it out there. And it was to the point where media couldn't ignore it anymore because so many people were talking about it. It was out there. You couldn't stop it. Even if y'all wanted to report something completely different, it's you can't not do it now.
Another thing that it opens up the door to is so like when you're out there, so like we have a camera, it has a microphone, it's professional grade and all that. We also get the questions in that we want. So, a lot of times the media is only going to ask those whatever thin line questions. And like, there's a lot of times they won't publish it, but we record the whole thing. And then having the experience from sitting in on many cases where I have the experience to say, okay, when I went down to the Ahmaud Arbery case, this is national. You got court TV vans, you got big, huge satellite vans, you got 10, 20, 30 cameras, as opposed to Lieutenant Nazario, where he felt like it was national because he CNN, et cetera, but didn't see the difference between, right, they're going to pass it to their affiliates to actually having 9, 10, 11 cameras in your face, and going to multiple different outlets, international outlets, the Daily Mail, the Associated Press, and all that. And like I said, with the Nazario case, because he's military, he can't say much. We saw in the Ahmaud Arbery case, the reporters were doing reports every lunchtime, noon, or whatever. We were the only ones reporting on the Nazario case, so people don't know that Brandon Tatum is a far-right commentator and he was in court And you still don't see that in the news, but that's going to be up for us to expose. People are slipping through the cracks.
As an expert. Don't forget that part.
People are slipping in through the cracks. They think that, oh, they're BLM. I'm only going to have to see them at a protest. But no, when we start showing up at the council and start showing up to court, sitting through whole jury trials, like, yeah, you can't just do that. And then, like I said, we're able to take to the public, oh, we witnessed this. We're not doing hearsay. We're putting down actual accounts. So they have to take it. Oh, it's not, oh, I heard this happen. I heard, well, how do you know? Because I was there. How do you know about all this? We was there from the beginning, and we don't let the news put the spin on it, because we've seen in cases like with India Kager, they came out saying the boyfriend shot at them, he was wanted, and so that's why she shouldn't have been in the car with him, so it justified her being murdered because she was in the car with a wanted murderer. He wasn't wanted, and then he didn't shoot at them, and the video footage from the 7-Eleven shows that. So and then even with cases with Matthew Russian, we got him out of prison. He's a Black autistic male. He got in a non-fatal car accident. They sentenced him to 10 years for a non-fatal car accident, but we were able to get him home. But the news came out, and saying that, he was suicidal and all this other things. And people were like, oh, well, we want to get involved. But the news said, and they'll send you the article. And you'll be sitting up there arguing fact that with a news article of hearsay. And it makes you look crazy. And it's like the longer we stay at it, and like I said, control the narrative. And then, they only show snippets on the news. So you capture that whole thing live. So they can't put words in people's mouths. And it keeps them truthful. And we see sometimes they get irritated. But then, like you said, it keeps you both ways, because you're sitting there with a camera just as good as theirs. But then they turn the cameras to you, and you just pass the camera off. So now you're a part of the story and telling the story. And they can't just go whatever way they want with the narrative of it, because like I said, we've seen people get beat by trial and even supporting based off of things that the media had pushed out there. And it's like, oh, the news said this, so the people think it's the Bible. But that comes with building integrity, being around for long. And when you hop off the curve, you got to be 100% right. You hop off the curve and you get smacked, you get egg on your face, then it's like, well, you said last time that, but that comes with experience and calculated risk and all that good stuff. But yeah, controlling the media and, competing with them. Like, we have a larger following than a lot of especially the reporters singularly. But even some of these news channels and blogs, like I said, those have died. So the whole newspaper, the physical newspaper, stuff like that, like I said, they come to our page. Plus, we're faster. We're on it. People are inboxing us. They're tagging us. They're like, well, how do y'all find out? We ain't got to have our ears to the street no more. We get it sent to us. Hey, what's going on? There's a large police presence over here. Oh, this is going on. Or if we don't see it, our supporters going to make sure we see it. You know what I'm saying? So, but we try to stay close to our locality. So, feel like it's important for everybody to know these independent BLMs, like, they're taking care of home. So, I don't know how Charleston gets down. And like you said, with different protests where if I go to New York, we wilding out on the cops. We shut down the Brooklyn Bridge. But if I go in Virginia Beach and step in the street, I'm going to catch a 1-year possible misdemeanor for the same protest that I just did in D.C. and New York. So, and I also feel like, people that when you start to grow on your following, try to help others elevate, because you didn't know until you knew. So if groups are coming along and they're trying to get started and, you got all these critiques because you have your way of you thinking it's going to be, don't chastise and, oh, you didn't know not to this. Like, man, there was a time that you didn't know not to that. So, I mean, let's keep an open ear and try to help other, elevate other people.
I think that's what, that's definitely a good point there. And then also talking about as far as having your followings and being able to connect with people and get that message out there immediately, but also have those supporters to ultimately hold these people accountable in various ways. They can't really hide when there's so many people that's pointing these things out. And in that regard, we talked earlier about how this couldn't be the first time, especially like in Memphis specifically, because of just how heinous it was. And I wanted to talk a little bit about Police Chief Davis the Black woman that runs the police department there in Memphis. And initially she was praised for how quickly she acted, but people are starting to look into her background. She formed this Scorpion unit, this aggressive police task force. But prior to that, she was head of a similar task force in Atlanta. And they also were carrying out these aggressive acts. They were court cases and whatnot. And she also trained with the Israeli military, which that seems to be a big connection. A lot of police departments are doing these trainings with Israeli military that are carrying out these occupations and actions against Palestinians. And they're bringing these lessons and things back here to the States, and we're seeing them on our streets. So with her obviously being the leader of this, obviously it seems to be like something that was a culture that she allowed to happen, or she should have known would have happened, or they knew what they were getting into. What should happen with her at this point, you think?
I mean, she got to go. Like I say, everybody got to go. Like, there should be next year, the year after, there should be nobody left on the board that was there. And I say on the board, I'm talking about the police chief. I'm talking about the captain of that particular precinct. I'm talking about the mayor. I'm talking about city managers. I'm talking about the city council person that's over that particular area. I'm talking about everybody. Everybody got to go. Because at the end of the day, just standing around and firing the five, that's not good enough, because they knew what to do. They knew how to do it. They worked as a collective. They picked the man up so that they could punch the man. But it was like they did it without like a whole bunch of like, lift him up, hurry up, lift him up. You know what I'm saying? Like they didn't have to, like, it was almost like they were communicating as if it's been done before. And that's just police culture. Like, police culture is, you get fired from here, you go work over there, and so and a lot of times you might be even promoted working over there, and so they're like, oh, he came from a big city, or she came from a big city, or she came from a place where the average of the national average, it's higher Black people in the national average, and so on and so forth. And so, yeah, we got a good one here, not recognizing that they left because they had to leave, but we just talking about like just leaving one area. We're not even talking about like the culture that she came from, right? So, if she leaves a culture, right, then are we really sure that culture is not doing the same types of things that she brought over here? And so, that's what we're talking about, really. We're talking about the police culture across the board, but we can't just talk about the police. We got to talk about those who enable the police. The politicians that are putting their hand and arm around the police captain and chiefs and so on and so forth to show unity while these types of acts are happening every other day, every other week, every other month. We're talking about people who are enabling this type of behavior, and then go in front of the cameras and talk about giving more money to the police on a regular basis, when those same areas, their schools look like trash and they're closing down schools. I know that's happening here in Richmond. We talking about, there's about 5 schools that are getting ready to potentially get closed down. They're all Black neighborhoods. And half of the reason is because they're dilapidated. But like I just said, in 2020, they spent $10 million looking at us. There was nobody that died. Now watch this. Nobody died. Now, we had a few thousand people at Marcus Davis Peters Circle. Nobody died the entire time that we were there during the occupation. That's two plus years. That entire time we were there at the occupation, not one person died at that circle. Not one person. And it was thousands of us. Okay. So if we start talking about like who's better at managing budgets, I mean, I would say any one of us on this panel is better at managing budgets because we don't have one. You know what I'm saying? Like we using our own money, we're using like our supporters' money, you know what I mean? And so like if we're talking about holding people accountable, we talk about the police chief, she got to go, right? Because she's utilizing tax dollars to hurt civilian people who are paying their taxes. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, he worked at FedEx, right? He paid taxes when he went to the store and bought stuff. He paid taxes every time he went and fueled up. He paid taxes every time that he got a paycheck, right? Some of that money went to police and they killed him. Point blank, period. That is a misappropriation of funds because they were supposed to be keeping him safe, not killing him.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree. She needs to go. You can't have that many of your officers do something so heinous and leadership not and leadership just be allowed to skate on that. Just, you know, because they would have to know what they would be allowed to do. You know, you get that from top, you get that from training, you get that from what you were told, what you were taught, what you've been allowed to get away with before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, look here in Virginia Beach where, you know what I'm saying? So the officer, Solomon Simmons, who murdered Donovan Lynch, he never even had to see a trial. The grand jury said that, you know, he didn't even have to come to trial. He had several infractions during this day. So he was supposed to be, because it was a mass shooting, he was supposed to, one, be following the ambulance because it had a trauma victim in it. He was supposed to be following them to the hospital. He disobeyed orders and stopped his car in the middle of the road like Action Jackson, leaving his car in the middle of the street, and then he hopped out. Murdered Donovan and didn't activate his body cam. Protocol is he was supposed to activate his body camera, which he didn't. So all that to factor in, he didn't get fired and he never got reprimanded to the point where after the grand jury decided he wasn't going forth, we started getting more inboxes and DMs about this dude pulling him over again. He literally got away with murder, never saw a trial. We never see the evidence. And because he didn't break any protocols in there, he was able to work for his own force. So you know he's going to be able to go to another force because, oh, well, you know, by our books, you didn't do wrong. So, you know, they're going to, you know, good old boy him and make sure that once he goes to whatever hillbilly state, like police know they can come to Virginia Beach because they can get away with XYZ because, you know, so they don't have a issue hiring. They have a big budget. You know, like I said, Newport News, in other hands, you know, I can't get away with that, you know, and there's a viral video of me, like we were talking about earlier. I actually got a guy out of handcuffs. You know, they pulled him over for no reason. I was telling him his rights. I told him to ask for a supervisor. I was asking the officers over and over why they pulled him over. They couldn't tell me. The video has like 3 million views on my TikTok, but long and short, the sergeant came. And if I was in Virginia Beach, I probably would have got obstruction of justice and all this other nonsense. But being that the culture they teach in Newport News, that cop let that guy go once he asked those officers why he pulled this man over. They couldn't give him no probable cause, and taking him to jail just because his license was suspended is not what they are, the culture that they're teaching in that police department. I filmed Virginia Beach Police Department doing a stop and frisk, and as opposed to me having my issues heard and me getting their information, they took out criminal slander charges on me that I now have to go fight. Charges that people never heard of in their life, not even a civil slander, a criminal slander. And so that just goes to show where like, oh, well, if you have, like I said, that's where you can kind of see the difference in the Republican ran and Democrat ran cities and states where they really mean that law and order. Like they really feel like the police are above all. Like, oh, if you resist a little bit, you deserve to die. Oh, you do whatever, you deserve to die. Pretty much the officer can do no wrong. And even still, the Blue Lives Matter coalition hasn't came out to say anything on Tyre. I only saw one ignorant post, you know, maybe saying that, you know, Tyre was resisting or something stupid. But you know, we have these cases like in Coleman Sample. He was killed in Virginia Beach by Virginia State Police. And it was kind of like Rodney King because somebody had captured the video from their balcony. The Virginia State Police don't exactly have to have body cameras. So if they weren't recording on the balcony, there would have been no footage. Coleman Sample was shot directly in the back of the head, and they're trying to say it's a suicide. There's no way it could even contort your body to where the bullet was. And then you can see clearly in the video that they did it. And so even still, these officers never miss a day of work. And that's why it's kind of scary here in Virginia when you verbalize these cases and like, yeah, these officers don't even miss a day of work. They don't even get identified. Like their life literally goes on, and you can, see why it would drive somebody who's has a victim of this brutality mad, because it's like you literally are not even seeing a pay cut and not even missing a day of work. And if we punch somebody in the face, if we shoot somebody, boy, it's an uphill battle. You're going to jail, you're getting bonded out, you got to pay for a lawyer, etc. And we seen in the case of Nazario, they paid this YouTuber $10,000 to come as an expert witness. Both officers had 3 to 4 lawyers, and where did they get the salary for something like that? No officer can afford 4 lawyers, $10,000 expert witness. And I'm sure those lawyers won't anywhere under 50 and hundreds of thousands that all had their own little special expertise. So, where does this money come from them fighting these cases? And when does the citizen safety ever come into effect? And I definitely land here. I feel like we need a fear for our life bill where we have legitimate fear for our lives, like a PTSD, where we, if we're getting pulled over lights, we are able to contact somebody immediately as well. And there can be no interaction until that third party gets there. That's not a police officer, not a police agency or fraternity, because, we've seen all these videos where, like in our case, why we started, Philando Castile, you asked him to get his ID. He gets his ID and you kill him. Lieutenant Nazario refused to put his hands back in his car because he had a firearm. He was an Army lieutenant, and he could have flashbacks of that case. And so I don't want to die right here. So I have a legitimate fear from something that I witnessed that I'm not comfortable putting my hand back in the car. And I'm also not comfortable saying I have a gun, because then I feel like the next thing that's going to happen is gun. And we've seen these scenes so many times. So it's like, we need our own legitimate fear for, like I said, every single case says, oh, it's officer safety, citizen safety, and it's for a reckless driving. But like I said, here in Virginia, when Chesapeake chased people and people die in fatalities, this is supposed to be a no chase state, because you're chasing somebody for a non-felony. You're putting more people's lives at risk by chasing them through the city, as opposed to, you literally were only pulling them over for a taillight. And yeah, I get it. But if you don't have a warrant or something like that, chasing somebody through 3 and 4 cities at 80, 120 miles an hour, and, more people can get hurt than if you would have just, that's why they developed the no chase.
Yeah. And I think, having bills and legislation on the books can be one facet that helps. But I think ultimately it's going to have to be some real change in the police culture, because that, that law is not going to be there to help you when you're face to face with some jacked up cop who is just like hyped on whatever the energy is at the moment. You can cite whatever law we want or have. And if he's going to, do what he did, like they did to Tyre Nichols, they're going to do it. It's got to be a very serious hard left in how police training and the culture in policing and accountability at all levels.
I bet you they came up with an equal force law where you able to use equal or more force to the cop, just kind of like how they are with us. So they're able to elevate force. So if you got hands, they're able to use a baton, and if you got et cetera. But it's just like, you got to subdue them. But then, like you said, you remember that thing where, yeah, you feel like that now, but the next cop on the scene, they're going to come on the scene feeling like Action Jackson and like they got to do something to you. So, that's when it turns into a running standoff. Like, hey, this is what happened. I had to flee the scene. You know how your boys get around stuff like this. We'll figure it out another day, just like with y'all. It's under investigation. We need a few days or a few weeks or a few months to get back to y'all. It's under investigation. Trust us, in properest of hands. But again, this comes down to unity being able to, because yes, we can say this and we know that we're all about it in our own sense, but you know, when it comes time to galvanize and when it comes time to stand up, and you the only one standing up, you know, they'll overthrow you. And then, you know, that's why we, you know, different cities and states, you know, people started doing protests armed, you know, because they were brutalizing us, but they weren't touching us no more. Once everybody started coming to the protest armed, we started getting tickets in the mail instead, which was easier on everybody. They didn't want to tear gas nobody with a whole bunch of pistols and ARs on the other side, because it ain't no fun when a rebel got the guns. So, you know, but, you know, making sure our community knows what's up, you know, and I'm saying that in layman's tones, making sure that they know, like, hey, we gonna give you these instructions, but as you know, ain't nothing out here in this world scripted. And, you know, we got to start taking our own safety and interests at heart, just like these officers. We want to go home like they want to go home. So,
yeah. So, yeah. And I think we'll probably end off with just any kind of steps or actions or things that people should take or could take going forward. Any kind of recommendations? Work that you've seen that could need to be done or whatnot?
I got just a few. So first of all, if you are the type that understand that these police, they have to abide by the law, then you need to contact the people that are held accountable for upholding the law, right? And I'm not talking about police. I'm talking about your elected official. So a Commonwealth attorney is an elected official, and they stand in the place of justice, as far as they stand in the place of what justice looks like from the court's perspective, right? So they're not a field cop, but they uphold the law in the courtroom. If you are looking at this moment and you're not an abolitionist, you need to talk to your Commonwealth attorney. Your Commonwealth attorney can be your best friend. Second, advocate for a civilian review board. Civilian review boards go back and look at past behavior in your localities to try to figure out what are the consistent things that happen from that particular precinct, from that particular area. So if you have a civilian review board, usually it's over the entire city. So that entire city becomes under review. When there are certain things that happen, it automatically triggers a review. And then if you can get it retroactive, then certain things that have already happened, those things can also be reviewed, and FOIA requests can be issued based on those things. The last thing I would suggest, and it's one of the things that we started with, is called Court Watch. Now, if you can have someone inside of the court figuring out what it is that's happening inside of the courtroom, that allows what enables the police officers to project a particular perspective, and for that perspective to consistently be pushed through, then you can then position yourself or position your area to counteract that. So one of the things that we found out through Court Watch was more times than not, the police officer was the only supporting witness, was the only witness in that particular case. So, you know, if you had somebody in the car and so on and so forth, they typically weren't utilized as a witness on your behalf. That person was typically either charged or they were completely out of the court case. And to have a witness that contradicts what the police is saying, or even explains why the police officer's perspective is that way, helps judges make different come to different conclusions. I say that because we had one particular case during the occupation that we were getting encampment. We consistently were getting encampment charges, which could potentially turn into felony trespass charges. So over a period of time, the judges became aware, and this is not because someone testified to this, but they became aware based on multiple cases happening back to back to back for encampment, that what was happening and what we were doing, and that we were shifting, we were taking shifts, and so on and so forth. And one of the judges made a statement that ended all the encampment charges. We didn't get any more after this. The judge made a statement. He said, well, I like to pitch a tent when I go to the beach. Am I going to get a ticket for that too? And because that's basically, we were under tents. I say that to say that that judge had seen multiple encampment charges and came to the conclusion that the police were trashing the tents, and they were open canopies. They weren't actual tents, right? But the language that everybody was using was tent, right? And so a tent that you would normally, when you think of a tent, you're thinking of sleeping in a tent. And that wasn't what we had. We had canopies. And so after a while, we learned from that, and judges learned from that, and the police ended up learning from that, and so on and so forth. So we didn't get any more tickets. But court watch, that was one of our superpowers. I would say CRB, a Civilian Review Board, that will keep a lot of people safe over a long period of time. And Commonwealth Attorney, if you believe in maintaining the police force in your area.
I think there's some good tips and information. Marcus, you look like you want to say.
Yeah, I was about to say, mine's would be because less technical, but more so just like if you think that, some of the topics we've talked about, seem like they interest you, feel free to reach out to any of us. I'm sure we'll have our, Instagram tags or whatever. And it's something that somebody said earlier that really struck me, but we all us as groups, we've seen a lot of like things come and go. We've seen a lot of like fluctuation, but we always willing to help. But something that I, urge folks just who are listening to this, especially if you're in a neighborhood or in a space that doesn't have a lot of movement, a lot of organizational movement, I urge y'all to start them yourself, because even though that sometimes might seem daunting, but I mean, it really ain't going to start till somebody started. And there's actually this Chinese proverb. It's like, I spent the time to prepare the song while the song's not being sung. And I really I don't know, I give that to people because especially during this activism, looking at the news, looking at everything that's going on, sometimes you feel helpless, but you'll feel a lot less like that way when you start reaching out to people who think like you, or at least similarly thought like you, so y'all can organize to mass mobilize into what needs to happen in your community, whatever it should be. So y'all can put together that plan together. So anyways, that'll be my main thing I impart, just mobilize together. It don't have to be no huge 100 people. 3 people can make a lot of shit happen, you know what I mean? And then 3 people goes to 6, you know what I mean? But it takes that one initiator. That's what I always say. One person be like, hey, y'all, I want to meet. Even if it's me, one other person, me or the 2 people, it really start off like that, and you can make something happen. So that's what I'll leave. And if y'all have any questions about how to build that from 3 to 4 to 5 to whatever, feel free to ever ask me, and always open for questions.
Yeah, definitely same. Just want to piggyback off of him. What we did here in the 757, it was me. I was tired of seeing, because I had seen the pattern of Mike Brown, Mike Brown, and then Trayvon Martin and everybody, and I was just like, yo, and then there was nothing being done here. And then actually it was somebody that checked me, because I made one of them Facebook posts like, why is this, da, 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 and somebody was like, well, why don't you? And I was like, bet, I ain't really the type to turn down no good time. And honestly, what we had, and we just had the same type moment, me and Lawrence, but Tyler, he tapped me on my shoulder, keep me pushing because it's been a while. But our first march was in Philando Castile. We promoted it for 2.5 days, and we had 300 to 500 people show up at 5 cities at the same time. And I didn't know, but like I said, that made the momentum, and so it birthed BLM 757. It's like we had, we got this huge following out of nowhere. But like that was 2016, but I could have just kept, had that moment and it just be that moment. But we started utilizing that momentum. We started meeting with lawmakers. They didn't know how could we get that many people to the street because they're so used to, oh, you got to knock on doors, you got to pass out flyers. We did all this with tweets. And even in our first protest, you had to email us and inbox us to get the location. And we didn't put the location. It wasn't about the media, police. We didn't ask permission. And everything went on, according to plan because, we trusted that everybody had our intentions in mind because, we went out there and even, case in point, in 2020, we had been around for 4 years. I had got arrested by the same officer who went on to murder Donovan Lynch. And they kept going despite me being in jail. Like, it was like, all right, well, if they take down a leader, they going to start rioting or they're not going, they're going to quit or whatever. But like, nah, they stayed out there and I was able to hear the protests inside the jail. And they had me hyped because they had it over the speakers. They had it over the walkie-talkies. It was pretty big. But like I said, stay organized. Don't let people break up what you have. Stay true to your local area. You know what your community is. Don't let outsiders come in telling you how to move or whatever. Just you know your community better than anybody else. And especially if, like you could say in our case, if the big organizations or people you may look at to be leaders haven't came down and with a cape and swoop down on your area, it's probably not happening at this point. They got a lot of times they have to see these egregious videos to come out. And even with that, sometimes they're slow to the gun. So, just stay organized and, don't lose focus. And, I say, a lot of us can fire off things, but this was all built up. Don't be overwhelmed, take it one issue at a time and tackle that. And then, and go from there. And me, I know personally, I started my journey because my 14-year-old cousin committed suicide due to bullying. And so I just want to be a voice for the voiceless and for those that feel like they're being ignored because I know the saying is, the riots are the voice of the unheard, but so are suicides. Suicides are also the voice of the unheard. So either people sometimes either lash out or they'll implode. So be nice to people on these social sites. And Black people, let us not make any toxic spaces down in other Black organizations, like have conversations, have emails, or just avoid each other. You don't have to acknowledge each other. Like y'all don't, what I'm saying? You're not fighting for the territory or nothing like that. Just, don't create more conflict and don't add to the narrative because we all need each other right now. And I'll land.
Yeah, that's well said. And I just want to point that I want to make since I think y'all covered a lot of them. Someone's mentioned earlier about the politician and the politics. And I think we should not forget about that component of this as far as people running for office, people getting in office, people trying to run for office, holding them accountable. And especially, I know someone mentioned about voting independent or not voting or voting with a party or whatever. I think at the local level, especially, we can hold these candidates a little bit more accountable and be like, look, are you on board with this? If not, we take our vote somewhere else in that regard. Like I think in a national sense, in something like a presidential election, it comes a little bit different. But in local elections, I think that can be a little bit more influential in that regard because then they want those small seats. They want to hold those areas. And if they're seeing large numbers of people that are willing to walk from them in those elections, if they're not putting their focus on things like police brutality, equitable outcomes for our communities and whatnot, that can also make a pretty good change and be active in that environment, showing up so they can see that people are there and that we're visible, so that they have to deal with the issues that we hold important. So I think that's another important part of the whole issue though.